Okay.
Hey, you two, long time no see.
All right, so we have the survey results for search and seizure, which it had gone out, but we made some changes, so. All right.
So I took out the old one and I just did a new one just so it wasn't convoluted. So this is, and because now it's both, it's 3370 and it's 3410.
Okay.
And remember 3370, we added the language around the breathalyzer and the wand. And
Right.
then for 3410, we added the breathalyzer language around the prom or dances or activities or,
right.
yeah, exactly.
Search
So we
ways.
wanted both to go out at the same time.
Right. So 3370 is a yes to the draft, 3410 is a no to the draft. I wonder why you took out the wording about clandestine groups not being permitted.
Remember,
Since it was a good thing to have in this section.
we talked about at the beginning of, there was language in the old, in the 2007 draft about clandestine. We were like, well, they're all school activity, like,
Right.
so we took that language out, and
Okay, so is that what she's saying? No?
I think so.
She did leave a number.
Yeah,
but-
I haven't had a chance to reach out.
No
My plan
worries.
was to do that today, but then Timberlake, Shannon had.
Y'all made everybody excited today.
Yeah.
All right, so search away, yes, adequate. It seems pointlessly big brother to me, but it's not overly so I'm whatever on the change. Works. Fine. All right, building administration, ADS, SS, and SROs may utilize the breathalyzer in the event there is cause to believe that the student is under the influence of alcohol. This implies they cannot be used without suspicion. I would add the following. Building administration, ADSN may utilize a breathalyzer at specific school events such as dances to prevent the use of alcohol in advance. But that's, it's on our policy.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
It's.
But that language could be added to the 3410, but I don't think it would be appropriate for 3370 because we talked about
Right.
specific to reasonable suspicion.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because that's on something totally different than just here. Okay, so we can look at the language on 30, no, this one, because I don't remember what we said.
At the very bottom.
Participation in a school-sponsored activity or event is a privilege. It is the intention of the Board of Trustees to ensure a safe environment for all students participating in school-sponsored activities. Breathalyzer testing may be a requirement at any school organization, event, or activity. Any social event or any extracurricular activities. Students who refuse the breathalyzer test will be denied admittance to the extracurricular school event, and their parents will be notified. Okay, do we need to add what this person is stating?
Yeah.
I think it says that.
Okay. All right, so then we're good to go on those two coming forward. We'll go to attendance.
So, hold on, I just want 3370 and 3410, right, to the board?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So with this one, remember the last time we talked, we were like, what is the problem? What are we dealing with? So Dustin put together a really cool little spreadsheet. I didn't add it on our agenda, so I can, are we logged in under you, clerk? So could I send it to you and then, the only reason I didn't add it to this agenda, so just so we could pull it up, is because there are kids' names on there, so I didn't want it on the agenda that goes out, but for this policy, would it be okay to look at it, Dustin? And
Yeah.
just with this group? Okay.
Yeah, we are under clerk report.
Okay, I just didn't want to pull it up and put it on this that goes out to everybody.
Okay.
But because we just kind of wanted some examples of what we're talking about. Hold on.
Thanks, Josh.
You're good? No, I need it. Thanks. Dealer's choice.
I love the way you wear your beanie.
So if I send it
It makes me think
to
of
you-
Robin Hood.
My ears do.
Pull it up.
In my head, not so much.
See more the Kevin Costner
Yeah.
Robin Hood or the
Yeah.
Robin Hood Men in Tights? Which one?
And then while she's pulling that up, I asked him to send me like, hey, what's the list of our kids that are like over 30? And we have quite a few, but again, students' names are on there. He did a
Right,
PDF, so I can't edit it, but we definitely have, I mean, it's significant. Nobody's at the 50, just the clerk. Aren't you logged in for the clerk?
Yeah.
Yeah, right there. So, I mean, we have quite a few,
Okay.
but nobody's at the 50 mark yet.
Oh, that's a plus.
So Dustin can break down his cool spreadsheet.
So, what I was kind of wondering when I was putting this together was, okay, what's just the average, what is the grade in relation to the number of absences per class?
Okay.
So I wrote down each student and I looked at, okay, if a kid first period missed 9 absences, what was their grade in that class?
Okay.
Third period, maybe that same student had 13 absences for whatever reason. What was the grade in that class?
Okay.
So it's just a relationship between the number of absences they have in the class period and their grade.
Okay.
So then I assigned each grade a GPA,
Okay.
and then after that I just took the average of the GPA and then assigned a grade to that GPA. So, you know, typically a A is a 4.0, a 3.7 is an A minus, a solid B is a 3.0, a B plus. Anyways,
Right.
so when you average all that out, if they have a student had 9 absences throughout all of those kids,
Okay.
which their sample size is pretty big for 9 absences, their
Right.
overall average is a 2.816, which would be considered a B minus in some school districts that use
Right.
the plus minus scale. 2.92 would be considered close to a B averages. So students with 10 absences, they averaged a B in that class.
Okay.
It isn't until you get, I think the first D is like 20 absences. If you keep scrolling over, students with 20 absences, if you go up towards the top and you scroll over to the right, so here's the number of absences and here's
Okay.
their grade.
Yep.
So yeah, 20 absences is when you get your first average.
Okay.
I mean, we still had one kid with it that had 20 absences in the class and got an A.
Right.
We had couple kids with B's, a few kids with C's.
Right.
I mean, even over here, I was like, man, 23 to 29 absences, their average was a C plus.
They have a lot of A's still. A lot
Now
of
what-
absences.
Yeah. What classes, so then this tab actually breaks down, this is where the kids' names are actually on. But then it actually shows the class, the number of average, number of. So this kid in this class had 20 absences, but still got an A minus in that class.
Can we hide this? I don't know how to. do that.
We
Oh,
can't
it's view
because,
only.
we
We
don't
don't
Oh,
have editing
okay.
access.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay. So can we?
Do you-
You can just move it over
There we
there.
go. Okay.
That's why I didn't post
That's
it on
fine.
the agenda
Yeah.
that goes out, but
Oh, thank you.
I loved the spreadsheet,
Okay.
Dustin.
Yes, thank you.
Did this take you a long
It's
time?
mathematical mind.
No, I mean, it's Skyward, it's all Skyward based. I mean, doing a little bit of the formula, I mean, yeah, it's not too bad.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I don't know exactly what to make of it. I mean, that's the hard part is, okay, well, what, I feel like there's something there that the data says. So on that, like, yeah, 9 to, the more red it is, the higher the absences.
Right.
On that other spreadsheet, but.
Right. I see that.
I mean, the hard part is you definitely have those kids, and I feel like we talked about this last time. You have those kids that don't have to be present, and I think it was you, Dustin, or maybe it was Josh that said our teachers do such a great job with providing everything through Google Classroom. I mean, they videotape their lessons,
Yeah.
so it, like, you could miss a day of instruction, and if you accessed online the Google Classroom, you would be able to pass the test and do just fine, as evidenced by some of that data.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The one thing that I somewhat came to the conclusion of, and I don't know how confident or how much I believe this, but making the statement as a district or as an admin that kids' grade, the natural consequence for kids being gone is going to be their grade. I don't know how confident that statement is or how much I believe
Right.
that.
Legitimate.
So then the question is, how important are we going to put how strong as a district do we believe in kids showing up to school, being in the seat?
Well, I would say at elementary, so this is just my opinion, like your spreadsheet, your teachers do a ton of Google Classroom. Elementary doesn't do it that way. I mean, they have some, like 4th and 5th grade, it's a little bit more, but K1 and 2, you have to be present to make those games because they're not putting that kind of stuff out there because it needs to be through the teacher. So, I mean, it is critical for sure primary grades, but I would even say 4 or 5, like, you know, they're
Create big skill gaps when
During
kids are missing.
significant.
I got to see a lot of this during COVID with an advanced student doing great before, ended up getting COVID, missed 3 weeks of school. After that, it took her probably a quarter to get caught back up. I gave her all the lessons. She knew everything. She was an advanced kid, but because she wasn't there receiving the instruction,
This policy.
she tanked.
Mhm.
Or a people pleaser,
I think
like
it
needed,
needs to be in front of
yeah.
please.
something.
Yeah, and so
Always.
now every kid's different.
Oh, for sure.
But for that kid, she needed to be in the classroom.
Yeah.
Had to be in there
And I
100%.
wonder, are these kids taking classes that are stretching them, or are they taking classes that are?
Well, that one that had a bunch of A's on that spreadsheet, like the 20 to
Only
24 to
because
29 absences, you saw like
You
that.
don't have as many credit situations at
GPA
middle
was like a
school,
C
so it could
minus.
be different. It's
That
more
made up with like 2
blended.
students, and I think both those students were high-end students, so they were still getting A's. So it inflated that. It really depended on, you know, there was a couple kids that were in NNU college level classes that missed 12, 16 days, and they still got their A's.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other thing that comes into play here that we're still not taking full advantage of is the self-directed.
We
learner.
talked about that last week
Yeah.
a little bit.
So I ran a report the other day, kind of wondering how many kids actually qualify.
Mhm.
And oh man, I have a spreadsheet of that too. So I took their GPA and then I took their ISET test, merged the two of them. It was right before the NWEA testing, but it was just more to get an idea. And I want to say we had like 90 kids that qualified. Don't quote me on that. I can get you that number. And it comes out to $50 a day. Every one of those. So then my next thing I wanted to figure out is, well, how many absences did all those kids actually have? Take all that number, multiply by 57, I think it's 57.33 cents if that 10,070 kids, 88 per student is actually accurate.
Mhm.
It would be interesting to see how much money they would actually bring in, and that's only Lakeland High School. And you have Timberlake High School,
Well,
Timberlake
and you
Middle School,
had,
Lakeland Middle School.
I mean, yeah, agreed.
wild.
I mean, there were superintendents that, again, are probably not using the self-directed learner to its maximum, but I mean, they just called school because they were like, we have so many kids out, we're just gonna make it a non-school day because
Oh,
it
man.
doesn't impact ADA.
It's wild.
Mhm.
I haven't heard of anybody doing that like a week at a time,
No.
just a day, yeah.
The 9 days, is that unverified 9 days?
We've never-
The,
No.
the definition in the statute says, a habitual truant, are days missed of school that the administrator believes are avoidable. So if you are out of school for illness and it's verified, especially if you have a doctor's note, that can't be considered part of the truancy equation.
So what about the people that we call to make contact and they say, yeah, they're sick, and they're not, I mean, you know dang well they're not sick, they're just missing school.
Well, that's, I mean, the
Can
way it
you-
reads, it's somewhat subjective.
Yeah, I mean, we're going through that right now with a few 6th graders, and it's just like, oh my goodness, and so it's like, where's the line? What do you think?
Is that 9 days state statute? Does that have anything to do with state statute? Or is that, I know it's a very common number.
The state talks about like when they're looking at accountability for standardized tests and those kinds of things. Like they look at the kids who are 90% in attendance. That's where that number of days comes from.
Okay.
Okay, so there isn't
You're
anything
finding
in
that.
law that states 9 days.
Okay.
Yeah. Which, I guess, struggle that I have is, number one, this policy isn't definitive for elementary, it is definitive for high school.
Yeah.
And I do think though, at the high school or secondary level, there's more things that go into play than 9 absences. It's what's their grade, what's their, are they still producing their homework? Are they still contributing to the class even though something's preventing them from getting there?
Yeah.
And that is, that's a principal, a teacher, a counselor, whatever. That's a communication within that pool. So stating, it says more than 9 days per semester, which now we have semesters and trimesters. So we really have to think about what we're going to do with this policy, because it doesn't globally fit the whole district. And 9 days a semester, that's what?
1 every 2 weeks.
1 every 2 weeks?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's 10%.
Yeah, so I think that's probably where the number's coming from. It's 10% of the overall school year.
Right,
So
because.
that's probably where they're getting the 9 days.
Because the accountability
Yeah.
is for kids who are in attendance 90% of the time.
Yeah.
And there's a piece of you, if you were working a framing crew with concrete, and if Dylan missed 10 days of, or 10% of the work, what would his boss do?
Yeah.
There's a part of and I don't know if that expectation's realistic, but
Right.
10%,
It's not 9.
being gone 10% of the time you're supposed to be committed to doing something, golly, that's,
That's a lot of days.
But I
seems
think
like it's
this-
a lot. I think
yeah,
you're
it'd
asking
be
for 9
six if we
days,
were
it's
looking
not
at
that many
18
days.
total for a
You go
year,
back and forth, and it's like,
and
golly.
trimesters.
So it would be 6. Okay. So then, I think.
I think we talked about this last week, that there was a bill that was being presented about taking away compulsory attendance. It died at the Senate or House level. Yeah, I can't remember which one. It died, it didn't get any movement.
Which bill? Sorry.
The bill trying to take away compulsory attendance.
Oh, yeah.
Want to put trimester there? Or is it
Yes,
still
we do.
semester?
Tri-semester. Now that being said, is that realistic for elementary? Or are we gonna be having hordes of students at the elementary level?
Well, so
Truant.
for instance, I just had a principal reach out to me, and don't quote me on the number, but it was 20%, I think, she said 15%, that this child, I think it was a 3rd grader, had missed school, and it was from the start of the year, so we blended into second, but significant amounts.
Right.
And so said, should we be pursuing truancy at this point? And I said, have you made any contact with the family? Have you done anything around trying to bridge that gap? That hasn't happened. And so, I think they've made the
Right.
but they haven't had we need you to come in and really, it's just, well, she's sick, and it's, there's Fridays and Mondays and whatnot or whatever, but there hasn't been a formal. I kind of feel like, there's a lot of kids that miss 6 in a trimester, and
Right.
you guys would be inundated with truancy.
Right.
When they're little
Which is
people,
why
because
we
they
had-
they catch everything when they're in their first
Yeah.
couple
Well,
of years in
you
school.
look at, you were out for a week, for me, I feel like when it's consecutive, they have, that's one thing, but it's when it's every,
You start looking for the patterns, okay,
Yeah.
every Friday, Johnny
but
is
how
not
do you
at school.
capture that in writing
Yeah.
is the hard part in a policy.
And they've
Right.
changed so the definition isn't in the law anymore, it used to be that we had to be able to say that it was avoidable, and there's no definition anymore in that way.
What does it say now?
Just that they're not in attendance the number of days that the board says that they should be.
So then it's,
I do think that the principals would love some concrete measures regarding at 6, do we set up a meeting, at 9, and then
Right.
at what point are we bringing them to the board? And there's always extenuating circumstances, like for instance, if you know a kid has pneumonia and they're gone for 10 days, like obviously you know that, like you'd excuse
Right.
that, but when it's random,
Michelle, if you go to that grades, that spreadsheet I made, will you go to that student breakdown? And this will give you an idea at the secondary level, and scroll all the way down. Each one of those lines is a new student. This is the number of students that we have that had 9 or plus days. You can keep going.
Wow.
Wow.
You can keep going.
My goodness.
That's
You can
a
keep
lot.
going. We had over 200 kids, I can't remember the exact amount, right there.
256.
256 days. And if we would have just took every kid to the board, because at one
Right.
point we talked about, you would have 256 people have to set up meetings with the board
Right.
to discuss and petition for 9 days. The majority of them were 9, 10, or 11 days.
Right.
But those are the number of petitions that Shannon, because Shannon deals with 99% of our attendance.
Right.
She has that many forms that's expected to come back to her. The large majority of them, she reads a little paragraph and they're, yep, the kid was
Yeah.
sick here, the kid was sick there, had a surgery. I mean, that's the large majority of them.
Right.
But that's the number that is meeting the 9 days, which is a
So
lot.
256 times 9 days times $58 per day for each of those kids is $133,632 we didn't get from the state of Idaho
Holy smokes.
for the kids at Lakeland High School.
But you're assuming that
That's
not
just
the
like
average
high school.
256, the average number of kids that those kids, the average number of days that those kids miss is actually over 9, because you have some that miss 20 days, you have some that miss 28 days.
Yeah, I just did the bare.
That's the
I just
bare
did the
minimum.
bare minimum.
How much was that again?
$133,632 just at your school.
You go to a 4-day week, that number comes down a little bit.
Yep.
Very true.
way to put in the plug, Dustin.
I have all the plans ready for once we're done with the levy.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I don't know if that's a unique semester. I mean, this is a small sample size, and I wouldn't want to make a ton of decisions based on one little spreadsheet on 1 year with, and maybe that thing's not even 100% accurate. I don't know.
Shannon, Josh, would you feel like yours is reflective? I mean, obviously you have smaller numbers, but.
No, we have
You have
about
that.
130
Yeah.
9-day petition.
We have quite a few of them in high
Yeah,
school,
and
too.
I personally, I felt like when I was an elementary principal, I mean, you guys have more weight at the secondary level, and I think it's a little bit more concrete, but it feels very ambiguous.
Right.
The other thing that it gets crazy at our level is you may have a kid petition for first and second and not the rest, and then another kid petitioning for fifth and sixth, and then you get screwy ones that it's first, second, and sixth that they're petitioning for. And then they petition, and then down the semester, they have to petition for four and five. And by the time, you got kids with 2 or 3 petitions, and you're like, oh,
Well, and that's all we do.
yeah.
Well, and what is super hard for our administrators is how do you look at a kid who missed 22 days in a semester and got an A in a class that they're required to have for graduation and say
Yep.
because you weren't here enough days, we're not giving you that A.
don't think
That's
you can.
so hard.
Especially if they earned it.
I don't think that it should. I mean,
Exactly.
that shouldn't be the stance.
No.
So if that's the case, like if that, what you just said is the case, and I don't know if I personally 100% agree with that, because I do believe showing up in person to work is important. But if that is what our district believes in, then in my opinion, we shouldn't have any attendance policy, just at the secondary level.
Mhm.
Just let the grade dictate. If you can miss every single day and you pass the class, then miss every single day.
More a college approach.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, but yeah, even some of my college classes, if you didn't
But
show
with
up.
that, I'd be less flexible with the Google Classrooms, late work, all of those things as well.
Yeah, if you enable the
Yeah,
kids to
yeah.
miss, yeah. We're creating our
College
own.
is not taking, I mean, it would be more of a college approach. They don't take roll. It's like, they don't
Some
even require-
classes
Some
do.
classes did.
Well, yeah.
Spence is not in any of them.
Yeah, but if you're in an online program, some of
100%.
them have no idea. You
Yeah,
just
as
need to
long
make
as
sure
you
you meet
post,
the,
Right,
Mhm.
yeah.
the
We did have
assignment
a
guidelines.
freshman who was in a math class, earned a passing grade, and did not get the credit because he went
Missed
up to
it
the.
days.
Mm-hmm. Might be handle.
I think kind of doing the,
Probably not common though.
either we have to take, a part of me feels like we have to take either a harder stance and say attendance is extremely important, that is part of the expectations of getting
Right.
a Lakeland High School, Timberlake High School diploma, is you are expected to meet our attendance requirements.
Right.
Doesn't, and if you don't meet those, then we're gonna start cracking down on, withholding credit. But there's gonna be there's gonna be so many very, very difficult conversations to be had. And I don't know if 9's the number, if that's the route we go.
Right.
I just don't know how you do that with the whole self-directed learner policy now.
Well, that would be your way
That's basically
around
what
it.
Well, yeah, so the kids who are demonstrating proficiency and passing their classes
Right.
can be identified as self-directed learner, but then you have the kids who aren't proficient on their last test and don't have the GPA that you have to have, and now because you're not passing at the level we want you to pass, your attendance matters. I mean, it becomes.
But aren't there hoops to jump through to become the yeah. So it's not just like, well, we'll just move you over here. There has to be an intentionality about that.
I think this addresses the students, but you also have to look at the teacher, and just going with NWEA testing to where when we have kids that are missing that and then trying to wrangle them down the road, so no different than a kid missing a test and then coming the next day and trying to get him or her to take that. Next thing you know, we're 3 weeks down the road and we're still trying to collect work or get a student to take an assessment that they missed. So that clogs up a teacher's lessons plan.
It's a lot of work on a teacher. I mean, every one of those absences, a teacher had to do a little bit of extra work.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of it's taken care of on Google Classroom,
Right, but still.
but a little bit over, a little bit, that adds up to a lot.
It does.
Well,
When
that's
you've
what
got
that's happening during
256.
COVID. I mean, I would tell you the teachers felt like they worked more because of kept capturing all of the kids and going through all the work and making sure everything was posted and all the videos and, I mean.
Yep.
Okay. So where do we go from here?
I would like, I'd be more, the ones that cause me the frustration, the absences are the ones that there's no contact home, that I look up a Skyward and it's unverified. Those drive me nuts. And those we are a little more strict with the phone calls and the meetings to get those parents in. And the first deal that I make with them, you call in here on out and we're good. I'll grant your petition. But those are the ones that cause me more angst than, the sickness. That happens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and again, I'm not suggesting that this is a good idea, it's just an idea, so I'm just putting it out there, that's my qualifier. I mean, do we say that we're not going to, do the petition, we're not gonna do any of that until the grade is impacted or the test is impacted? Is there evidence of, we're not learning? Like, is that when we step in?
I would think, again, if we did that, which I'm not against, we are going to be more strict with our late work policy. We're going to have a steadfast
somebody
rule with
actually
those.
put that in there. They feel like we don't really have,
No,
we're not calibrated. That was one of the comments.
Well, we accommodate. I mean, that's what we do.
Mhm.
You got a kid that needing help and that missed days,
So they gave
Jason's going to sit there and help them.
examples. Yeah, when I send this out to just as the agenda, people are taking the time to look at it. So then prior to a survey ever going out, they'll give me comments and I take names off of it, but I put their comments on there. And I'm pretty sure all 3 people that gave me feedback were all secondary, which would make sense.
What did they have to say?
They bring up that whole missing work
And that would help the teachers, but man, that, again, you'll be put in spots though that'll be very difficult.
I guess my concern is if it's like, if the 9 absences don't mean anything, like, are we hoop jumping? I mean, is Shannon spending all of her time with these 1,000 meetings and we're just gonna grant it? And that's like, I don't know, if it doesn't mean anything.
Well, the one idea is that it is getting a little more buy-in from student and family that, the inconveniences them that they've got to start doing this. But it is a lot of work on our end, and pretty soon it's like grading 4,000 essays, that they
Right.
all start looking the same and you're just approved, approved, approved. Like, we've had kids that have had to petition 6 straight semesters. And I don't know the answer. I don't think it's to the point, obviously the behavior has to change, but I don't think it's to the point that you're taking a kid for a habitual truancy
Lots of
charge.
feedback. I don't.
It is, yeah, which is good. I
good.
mean,
Yeah.
we need the feedback because
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
Yeah, I appreciate that
comment
they
about-
email me. Yeah.
Solid deal. I mean, that last one is legit.
well,
Yeah.
enforce the current policy, well, that's on you guys.
Don't,
It's, so it's like, how do we, is there just an attitude within the district that, we have it, but you don't have to follow it? I
Well,
mean,
at elementary, it's not concrete, so it's super ambiguous, but I
Well-
would say,
within the policy, it says regular attendance. What does that mean?
exactly.
And for a minimum of absences, well, what is a minimum?
Well,
I
and,
mean, it's
and,
like-
and you have
Yeah.
parents will call it in, and so it's like you're asking principals to make a judgment call when the parent has said, like, they have the flu, and they have this, I mean, and that's the hard part, so somebody said this earlier, are we probably more lenient because we're working with our families 110%, and I think then you have people that get frustrated with that because, so the balance is we definitely have legitimate situations where people are out, right? We have the self-directed learner scenario that we could qualify. We also have some real strong outliers that it is definitely impacting their learning, and so how do you make a hard fast rule? Because I feel like you're either doing a ton of hoop jumping because you're going to grant the credit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to be bringing 200 or 300 kids to the board at just secondary, just high school alone for truancy.
Do them all at once. Right in the gym and say, deny.
I mean, I guess one of my questions that I would have, and I know you can't speak for this, but I guess in our shoes, you have a kid who has 13 absences, a couple more legit, couple of them are like, hey, you should have been to school these couple days. But regardless, they met over the 9 days. They did not meet our policy. They have 3 Bs, an A, and 2 Cs. Do we take that person to the board? According to our policy, we potentially could. Actually, according to our policy, they go onto a plan. They actually go on, hey, you're on probation, and then the next time you hit the 9 days, and let's just say the exact same thing happens the second time, we take that kid to the board. In the meantime, this parent is ticked.
Right.
And you're all talking 215, and of those 215, you're probably gonna have 150 extremely upset parents
Right.
that are coming to the board, and we're hoping for someone to support our schools, especially in the next couple of months. I don't know, there is a part of us as an administration team where it's like this, we're overwhelmed, like what battle are we fighting here?
Right.
So could you make it progressive, like just this is a little bit out of the box? I mean, because where it really matters, the attendance, it sounds like, because again, at the elementary level, we're not doing all the Google Classroom stuff just because foundationally that's too hard to do. It's just not, you can't do it because it's tactile, kids have to be doing it. Could it be like you're looking for patterns, so at elementary school we have more concrete numbers about absences, because it really is, even if you're a really bright kid, 9 days, 12 days, 15 days, you're losing out on instruction and it will definitely impact you. It's rare that we have kids, I think, maybe not at 4 or 5, but definitely K3, like where you're still, unless your parents are really on top of it and going over all of that and really doing the homework, like you're going to struggle. So could we make it more concrete? And then as we move along in those grades, if we start to see families with excessive absences, even if there is like they're still passing because our teachers do such a great job, like there's some like, okay, so there's a parent meeting about it's important, because it's not just about the grades, it's about the social aspect, it's about being connected, it's about being involved, it's all of those things. So could we make it, you know, like maybe not a concrete number per se, like somehow we make it more progressive that we're looking at accumulation over a course of years, not just this one semester? I mean, I don't know. Because then you're trying to look for those outliers of patterns of this is all the time. So either we're directing them to be a self-directed learner, or we're saying we are going to start withholding credit because this is problematic.
Right.
But we're looking at all the history, because right now we look at it in a siloed.
Yeah, because then that does make you think of, like, at the middle school, I can think of like 3 to 5 families that were struggling with attendance for the second sibling in a row. We're hearing from the elementary school that they're struggling with attendance with the family. So
I think, Lynn, what you're saying makes, well, it's perfect, but I think it's kind of what we should be doing in a way. Like, you're talking about the progressive, the pattern. Well, the way our policy currently is when they hit 9+, they go on a probation period. Well, there's kind of like your step 1 of your pattern. Then they hit it again. Well, now what do we do? Well, it was just 10. There's a couple reasons. Okay, well, so now they're on it again. So now what about the third time? The hard part that I know at Lakeland High School that we're having, at what point do we say, hey, this is the 4th time? This is just in our high school.
Right.
We got to take you to the board. And I think if we had a more concrete pattern, you know, system where it was, you know, maybe we do have to have them 3 strikes, and maybe we raise the number from 9 to 13. I don't know what.
Well, or maybe there's a rule that says, you know, after 2 petitions of credits, the 3rd petition is an automatic coming to the board. I don't know. I just try. How do I not overwhelm you, but not overwhelm you?
I think if you
No.
didn't have anything, I would be interested if you wiped this and said we don't have a policy anymore. I bet you our attendance numbers are exactly the same.
100%.
Yeah. Like, there are going to be kids that you can miss as many days you want are going to be perfect attendance. That's what they do. And others that are going to miss, you could say if you miss 1 day, you're going to be expelled. They're going to miss 35.
Yeah.
But if the expectation is, you know, it's ambiguous whether or not you attend, what do we have to enforce attendance?
Nothing.
Nothing.
And so
Your grade,
then-
well, it would be your grade.
Yeah, the natural consequence, which for the
But-
most plays out,
How is that natural if they
but it doesn't. The only thing that you could change, and I'm not for it, but you make it punitive. You bring back because you're missing seat time, let's do Saturday schools.
Yeah.
And that's, like, not for it because I'd be there on Saturdays mainly. But that would be the one thing that may change it, and at the end, does it really matter? Because I think you're still, even when you bring that, you're still going to have kids that miss 35 days.
Because you're going to have parents who won't have their kids there on Saturday because that's family time.
There's a couple school districts. One of the most successful school districts in the state is Sugar Salem. You go to their district website.
Sugar.
You go to their district website and you go to Sugar Salem High School, and then you look at, right next to that, they have Sugar Salem Online. And then you look at their staff. I don't know how big this school is, but there's like 30 instructors, 20 instructors on Sugar Salem Online, and I assume they were the exact same of their high school staff. But then when you look at their math teacher here and their math teacher that's actually Sugar Salem High School, they're different people. I don't know all the details of it, but then there is a part of me that how many schools throughout our state actually don't offer we have an alternative, placement, Mountain View, that helps students that are at-risk students that have an online program, but how many now are going to, instead of going to Bridge, instead of going to IDLA, they're actually doing it within their own district? I think there's some that are doing it. I don't know how many, and I also don't know if it's a good idea, because what scares me, there are some kids in our community that I think do need this online program, and it's great for them. But you start having more and more kids in our community that going online. What's our community going to be 20 years from now? And that's probably the most part that scares me the most about this online stuff.
Disconnect from other people.
But how also, is there any other idea that's going to help us win the battle where we don't have 256? That's almost a third of that is a third of our students that are missing 10+ days, over 10% of our actually in-seat time.
Right. Well, I challenge you, Lisa, because you said disconnect, but look at how long colleges have been offering online courses, and look at how many within the job force are remote now, working from home. Because that's exactly where we're at.
Well,
So we
many
can't-
jobs are tech now where
They are,
you
and-
have to be able to be, you know, almost an expert. I mean,
unless you're in the civil service of
Mhm.
police officer, medical professional, you know, really?
you have to be proficient in navigating online.
You do, and I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm just saying that, I don't know if thinking that it's so negative or so bad is the right perspective.
Well, I think if
Because-
you go to the angle that you're talking about, and you're talking about it really potentially the way that you're wording it is you're meeting people where they are and you're providing options for your community.
Right.
And so instead of having, like, if we're having an algebra class and, you know, and maybe that is, you know, you're part of that working in tandem with the families and you're offering a different solution. It's like, if we already have people doing Google Classroom, well then, instead of having the teacher having to manage that on their prep and, you know, because the absences are significant, we have somebody else that's managing the Google Classroom, checking the work, and so that they are more connected, there's a little bit more accountability just through the lens of, because the goal, in my mind, and maybe this is naive, I just want kids learning. You know, and that's the goal.
See, and
Are they proficient at what they're doing?
But what do you want them to learn?
Well, hopefully
And there's
algebra.
more to life, in my opinion. I mean, I'm
Agreed.
huge on academics, but there's more than the math, the science, the reading, the writing.
But if they're not showing up, they're not accessing those pieces either. And to Josh's point, if we don't do something, they're just gonna keep doing what they're doing. So maybe do we meet them where they are and there's at least some, I don't know.
Well, we already are, and what's going back, I don't know how many people are already on Mountain View Online.
A lot.
And I bet you, if we serve 2,000 secondary students between, and I know it's probably not 2,000, but maybe it's close to 1,600 between all secondary students or high school students in our district. And if there's 200, 300, 400 kids that are on Mountain View Online, that's 25%, if that's I don't know what the number
I'd say
is.
it's about 172, I think is the last I saw.
So 200 plus, so 200 to 1,500. You're sitting at 8, 10, 8%.
know.
Already 8% of our students are online. At what point is too many kids being online where we actually are? Because there's only so many online jobs. We got to be able to prepare our kids to be able. My kid needs to be able to be in person.
Well, with the new
And I agree with you on that. I
with
do agree with you.
With Trump in office too, he's putting a stop to a lot of that online stuff. He's making people go back to work when they're cut. So it is interesting to see. How do we get funded for those online kids? 'Cause we don't get
Alternative
80
school funding.
Huh?
Alternative school
Well,
funding.
as
But
far
we
as
don't
the-
get ADA,
Yeah.
do we?
Mhm.
For them if they're online?
Mhm.
How do
And
they
at
prove?
a better
Yeah,
rate.
qualify.
They have to, they've got to, if they're doing their work, then they're present.
Okay.
They have to log in and.
And every kid that's online has to meet an at risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that. But so we're checking those. We're making sure those boxes are checked every day
That's
for.
what Jerry Quillen,
Oh, okay.
she does, working with those kids.
Yeah,
I
it's
agree
a
with you.
tough
I
one.
mean, it's all the other.
I worry
aspects.
about doing it being subjective too, because how do you, isn't that lawsuits waiting to happen if you take one kid to a board but you didn't take the other, and because it's all subjective?
So
And they find out about it?
I might have missed this, sorry to take back the call, but when you go back to like coming out of COVID, we set aside our attendance policy and didn't hold kids accountable. Would you say attendance, Josh, is worse, the same?
Well, when we came back from COVID too, we were at till 1:30. There were a lot of other variables after that when we came back with the attendance.
But even like the second year after.
Well,
Because
because I had a meeting with a parent and a child today dealing with attendance, and pulled her up senior, and just looking through the coding, she was a freshman right after COVID, and it brought back flashbacks because we had the coding changed, and you could see it about midway. We had the YON, they
Yes,
called they're
online.
gonna stay,
Yes,
and they're
online.
and that made me giggle like, holy cow, that seems like decades ago. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with our attendance this year. We're missing a lot of kids, but I think we're still at 92. And I think you're that high. I think we do focus on this number, the people that are missing the 20 and 30 days, and then get overwhelmed with that. But if you take a step back, and I love your spreadsheet, and of course it's more than I'm thinking now, but I don't know. I don't have any answers with
This is a
getting
hard
kids
one.
there.
It is.
So what, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just, with Jason's comment about the subjectivity, I believe there has to be some element of subjectivity because, again, the principal, the teacher, the counselor, you all are in the mix with that kiddo. So you know what you know, as opposed to that kid where, you're going to have that kid where you can't make any parent contact, you can't get anywhere with that parent family.
Multiple
Then
time infraction with
you
the.
have to bring them to the board. So, I mean, I can't see where that would be, people will litigate whatever, but I think there's more teeth in the fact that it's like, well, we've sent these letters,
Yeah.
we've made these calls, we've tried to locate you people, and you're not there, so you're going before the board. This family, they're with us, they communications back and forth, everybody's helping this kiddo, and the kiddo's got an A in the class. Your little Bobby has an F. So, I think that subjectivity is appropriate.
Yeah.
But that's just my thought.
Would you want a kid that's failed the attendance policy or has not met our attendance policy 3 times, but each time has had that A, B, C, but we've communicated, no, you went over 9 days again.
Right.
You went over your 9 days again. Went over it again. Would you want that kid, even though grade-wise they're showing just fine, would you want that kid in front of the board?
Personally, no. But if you're following the policy and that's what the policy says, then you have to follow the policy. Because to me, from the subjective level, if that kid is soaring through with A's and whatever it is that's causing the absenteeism is an issue, and you are navigating that with the family and everybody's on board, why does the board have to be involved? If it's a resolved situation. But if the policy, if we want to enact everyone must adhere to the policy, then I guess you're bringing them to the board.
Because the hard part that I would have is if you have an attendance policy, but then we also have all the academic policy. In order to graduate, you have all the academic piece.
Right.
If you have 2 kids that attendance-wise is meeting the same criteria, which fails to meet our policy, but one kid's getting A's and B's, the other kid's getting D's and F's, we're going to bring the kid who bringing D's and F's to the board for attendance, but not the kid with A's and B's, even though the attendance piece is the one that both of them are breaking.
Right.
Both of them have the.
So I
in
think
the-
no
in the
Joshes and we don't have an attendance
In the
policy.
other,
Exactly.
yeah, with your D's
Exactly.
and F's, the natural consequences, they've got F's.
Yeah.
We don't have to take
Yeah, this
credit
isn't
away.
an
They
issue
didn't
if
earn
your
the
spreadsheet had nothing but F's over 15 days. Right?
It will be an issue in the workforce though, if that AB student is missing that many days.
100%.
They won't have a job very long.
100%.
So,
Then that's a natural consequence.
Yeah, but are we setting them up for failure then if we're not trying to take care of that right now? Because part of our job is to get them to the next level, right? And at the high school level, the next level is workforce. So,
But we
But
are
part of-
talking about
it's not just
behavior
our
and
job, that's
academic.
also a parent.
Trying to
yeah,
combine them.
100%.
100%.
But it's also development. Wherever that kid is on the age spectrum, at some point that child has to assume his own accountability, and I would assume that's when we've crossed over the Rainbow Bridge and we are now in the workforce.
Can't say rainbow.
We've crossed over the cobblestone bridge and we are in the workforce now, and I don't know that I would reflect back and go, it's my high school's fault that I can't keep my job because
I don't know.
Those kids should have hold my credits. All they should have made me go in front of the board. I would have been.
Rather, how about looking at it from the other way, that there's incentives if you are at school? Like I remember my high school days, if you had perfect attendance, you got additional points to your class average. If you missed less than 3 or whatever the case may be, that it was more of an incentive. And it wasn't like, I got to go to school today to do well. You're thinking, I get 3 extra points. And look at it that way as opposed to the punitive side on the back end. Let's start address, because we are focused on that bottom, whatever it may be, 10 to 20%, or let's look at that middle group to bring them up, as opposed to take that lower level and get to the average attendance.
And just make efforts to make our schools places that kids
Yeah.
want to be.
And it comes down to, you ask, how do you change that, and get your teachers. No, I've heard it in this room several times. Well, your teachers will make class meaningful, that they want to be at.
When we're doing those engaging lessons, we've intentionally not had the teachers tell students when they're coming. Because the idea is they'll be like excited to eventually, pop in and surprise it's a cool lesson.
What is it, best day ever?
Bet you won the
Best-
grant.
It was
What's
the
it
best
called?
day of school
Best
ever.
day of school
Let's
ever.
do school. We haven't won it yet.
You got this.
Yeah,
That thing.
I feel confident.
So, what do you feel, Josh? What do you feel is a realistic policy or not policy, or what would be a recommendation or an idea that you have?
I just wonder if we lean more into the word may, where it says, after this many days of absences, this may trigger the following, because then it gives principals and administrators that in their back pocket for the families that really do need to have some support and some banks of the river for, you really
It
do
also
have
gives
to.
you some teeth to the ones that you feel like are truly abusing it.
Yeah, yep. Because, there are a lot of times when it's a safety issue. The kids need to be at school. It's not safe for them at home. But it's easier for the parents to just say, well, they don't want to get out of bed. And, so if we have some guidelines that we can help encourage that, but it's not a have to. They get to 15 absences and we know they're on a 504, or we know they have this surgery, or, their dad died or something. We don't have to send a letter to those kids. We don't have to do this for 250 kids, but we do have these procedures in case.
Kind of goes back to the way the statute used to define habitual truant, which was when the administrator deems the absences as avoidable.
Yeah. And what does it say now?
It doesn't have a really good definition, just that it basically doesn't meet the attendance policy of the district.
Okay.
The one thing, when we went to that chronic absenteeism deal, it was more focused at campaigns, getting out the message of how important attendance is. It wasn't focused on, okay, at 10 days you're going to go to the board. It was like, what are we doing to promote
And
being
probably
at
it
school?
goes back to you're making them places where kids want to be.
Yeah.
And they're connected, they have trusting adults.
Yeah, that belonging.
Mhm.
Parents feel like they belong in the community.
Women houses,
Yeah,
just sort of.
I know. It's very exciting.
It's gonna be so exciting.
Yes, can't wait. I'm gonna order a crew neck.
Need scarves. Need to hand out scarves.
Oh, yeah.
Not t-shirts, but scarves.
I just want you three to know
I
that it's
can block it,
official
yeah.
and you're now part of policy committee because you've come for the last several
This is the
weeks,
threshold.
months, like, it's official. You have to be here every Thursday.
So are we in agreement that we need to have an attendance policy or not? I would think that'd be step one.
Yeah.
Yes or no? Are we doing an
You
attendance
might
policy?
got kicked off.
Are we doing one or not?
Yeah. I mean, I think there needs to be
I
something.
think you have to.
But I just think it needs to be flexible, where the
Yeah.
administrators can use
I agree
it
with
as
that.
a tool that they need, but it's not a handcuff.
So for step two, I think one thing I'd like to have a conversation about, and I only want to speak for secondary, high school. I don't even want to touch elementary because I know nothing about it. I don't know much about high school either. But 9 days. Are we stuck on 9 days, or should we have a conversation on? Should we have at least a conversation? Should that be changed to 12 days? Should it be that changed to 15 days, 20 days? I don't know.
It'd
I
be
mean, at
interesting
9
to
days.
look at the data, like if each school polls, if there's a number that just kind of naturally makes sense, like that's where we really see the GPA at most schools drop.
Where does your spreadsheet break off?
That'd
Is
be
it-
hard for elementary because it's standard.
Did you
Yeah,
see it? Is
but
there
like
a correlation
secondary.
there between
We can
days?
make it different for elementary. I mean,
Michelle, if you go to the grade,
It was east.
the one on the left, and then scroll up, and then scroll to your left.
directionally challenged. Oh, rather left. I am
There she
directionally
is.
challenged.
2.8, 2.9, 2.8, 2.6, 2.5, and then it jumps up to 2.8.
No.
Now,
Okay.
because our sample size is so small, one student can have a big poll.
Yeah.
I mean, that one kid with 13 absences has 6 classes that got 6 A's because they were a really, really good student. That does skew the data.
Or if there's a
There's
threshold where
18
Well, it's
absences
an
was a
outlier in
big-
the data.
Yeah, you've got 1, 2, 3, but here you got 2.5.
Dustin, your absences are everything except school-related?
Yep, I took out activity. That was the only thing that I.
That's the only
I
one?
tried to take out all activities.
I wonder too if there's a certain number of absences where you see a drastic decrease from like 256 kids down to 50. You know, I mean.
Well, you could scroll if you scroll down, you can kind of see. So 16. Look how many 16. That's the number of kids or number of class periods that kids miss 16 absences.
Mhm.
So the longer the list, the longer you go down, the more. I mean, that's so 16, 15,
And then you've got a whole bunch over there on the
I know.
end.
and that includes 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So that range is
It
bigger.
looks
Oh,
like
the
30.
range is bigger.
Let's change the
Yes.
ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, 30 days.
30 days.
Oh, jeez. That's 2/3 of the quarter.
I'm more interested on maybe being a little more strict with the late work policy. I think if we were, and I don't know if that's the right thing, less flexible when it came to that, would that encourage kids to miss? Not as good on the Google Classroom, more informative rather than more online type of a program that this is the only place that you can get the material. I'll put the dates of when we got stuff and put a schedule on there. But also, if you're gone, you've got a day or two, whatever our policy is. I don't even know what our policy is because
I think
we're
it
flexible
varies,
with it.
that's why, yeah.
And then you throw in kids with an IEP. Pretty soon, you're gonna need a landing airplane chart of what's
Who's
due
where?
when for you.
I think that's why a lot of teachers are frustrated
Get
because
it.
they're just saying I'll just take it whenever.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they're so now, back in the day when
So
we had a
hard to
lot less
manage.
absences, it was a lot easier to maintain. You were gone on Monday. You were here yesterday and you didn't turn it in. I mean, now they have so many kids absent, it's just a free-for-all.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I mean, that one email, what she said, they've been in X amount of days.
Right.
And they've already missed 140, there's 140 absences in 3 weeks.
114 students with 140 absences. That means everybody's at least out once, and then some,
She's missing. I mean, that's wild.
in the first 2 weeks this semester.
Well, and
Who's that
just think
That's
logistically
crazy.
of you're trying to manage that because then there's an expectation that you're checking in with all those kids to find their work. I mean,
Right,
you know, like.
but this is an anomaly though, because we're talking about the first 2 weeks of this semester when we had
That's
all
true.
of that sickness.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Kids were
People
out
really were really sick.
for a week at a
When
time.
did the semester start?
January
28.
Had a few snow,
Was it 28?
buffer days, I guess.
27.
I might have received this before that.
No, because it says in the first 2 weeks of this semester alone.
Okay.
I'm-
It's like some of them came in before.
So I do think that could be a little bit of an anomaly just
Sure.
because of the influenza that we've had running
Well, I
through.
always quiz up Declan's friends when they come over. I'm like, how's school? What do you think about it?
I know
already?"
one conversation-
Peaks and valleys.
Yeah, give them some cookies and quiz them up. But, and I'll ask them about, if you're absent, whatever. This sounds like I'm quizzing them, but it comes up naturally. And they say, well, it doesn't. It's easy. When I'm absent, I just come back and get caught up. So I don't really need to be there. One of his friends went to STEM before coming here, and she's like, I never missed a STEM because, oh my gosh, it was so much work. But here, it's nice because if I'm sick, I come back and I'm caught up. I'm like, so I do think some of it we need to take as feedback, and we need to up some of our rigor, especially for our advanced kids. They're showing us. I mean, I don't need to come to school. I can miss 30 days and I have straight A's still. Well,
Mhm.
if that's how we're funded, if we're an in-person school, we need to make the learning meaningful for them every day so they want to be there and challenging.
Right, but the attendance policy is not gonna influence rigor.
No, I'm just talking about the
Yeah.
backside,
Okay.
like being upstream.
While you're hounding the kids and testing them with the cookies.
Stop, it made it sound way weirder than it is, I hope.
It's a tough one, because any thought you can, there's so many different things you could argue with anything you say.
Right, but whatever we put here, we need to be able to apply it, because
Yeah.
that's where, I know Shannon at Lakeland High School really struggles because, okay, they've missed more than 9 days. They petitioned last semester, we gave them their credits, they're petitioning again, they have straight A's. What do you do about that? So whatever we put here has to be something that we're gonna be able to actually.
100%. And I do think the board has to, or I shouldn't say has to, I would like input from the board. Because ultimately, we take them to the board.
Correct.
And we don't want to be taking a bunch of students that the board's like, they have a 4.0 or they have 3 A's and 3. Why are you bringing us this kid?
Right.
But if the board is, no, being in the class, I don't care what their grade is. Attendance is a big part of being a Lakeland High School in-person student.
Right.
So bring them. I don't care if they have a 4.0, I don't care if they have a 1.0, bring them.
Okay.
I don't know where that lies.
What I was thinking is, would it be helpful, we did this once before, it was several years ago, but we did it with the dress code policy. Would it be worthwhile to invite someone, have a couple of elementary representatives, middle school, high school, and have a workshop with the board around attendance, just what is our belief, what do we...
Well, maybe we should start first by bringing just this policy and its
And rawness.
muck to the board and saying, what do you want
What's your
for our
vision?
district?
Right.
And then bring up, do we want to have the workshop? Can we have, I'm sure there's one trustee that will give very clear direction. I know there's another trustee that's has a specific attitude about truancy. So, it's
Okay.
eclectic, and I have a feeling that
Yeah.
we could get better guidance so that we're not spinning our heads just throwing words and trying to make it work when, it might just be vetoed
Well,
and
I just think
shipped away.
the reason I said workshop initially is I feel like Dustin and Josh have really valid points. Some of the
Absolutely.
we would have to just and because we can't, it's the board's meeting, just making sure that we have an opportunity of these are the scenarios that we are trying to work through, what we're grappling with, and this
Right.
is why.
Right.
And again, maybe Dustin, we can tweak that spreadsheet a little bit, and you can kind of walk with just taking off student names or whatever. You know what I mean? But I just them understanding this is kind of what we're dealing with at elementary. This is and
Well,
so,
and that data I think is significant because
yeah.
it should guide the policy.
Mhm.
Because if we are having habitual absenteeism at elementary, that's huge, and
Right.
at high school, that's huge. Well, that merits a conversation.
And I mean, what would be interesting to me and telling really is if I pulled all 6 elementary principals, what would their number of, for me, this is at the point when I feel like I'm meeting with the parent, but this is when I want this family going to the board, because it's in-person learning is so critical to learning, like take out all the pragmatic and the social and all of that, but the in-person is so important to just acquisition overall. Middle school might have a totally different number and high school could have a different one because the variables are just different. And is the board comfortable with it not being, I mean, that's messy, but that's kind of the world we're in right now. It is a little messy.
How about, again, thinking outside, that I see attendance at the high school level, when you're a freshman, you need 46 credits to graduate. So that's all gonna be performance based, whether you get those 46 and 4, which is ultimately the goal, or it takes you a summer school to get those credits. That's where the natural consequence, if you're missing school, you're not getting the material, you're not gonna do well and jeopardize failing. Attendance at that elementary level is, there's a lot more involved in that, because you can miss 18 days and be deficient in a lot, and you're still going to 2nd grade, and so on and so forth. And that is habitual, that we do have an attendance policy for the elementary. A little more maybe, well, middle school has pathways now, so that's like high school. You just have a policy for the elementary that's more addressing families, the whole picture of it. And then we're on the academic side with middle school and high school, because you've got to get the 46 credits. And then there's that natural consequence.
Recognizing too, so when I did my master's program, there's a research class attached to that, and I had to do a research project. My research project was, I went to Lakeland High School to their vault, and I pulled out every single student who had lost credit due to attendance. And I went back in their cum file and looked all the way back to their elementary.
Yep.
And that attendance pattern started in kindergarten, and you can watch it all the way. It's learned behavior, oftentimes, not always, but in the case of my research, that was definitely the case. And so whatever elementary looks like, it is more important for kids to have their high knees in the seats, because it's the learning gaps that kids end up with when they're missing a lot of school is a lot more challenging, because it's not, we don't do Google Classroom. The kids can't go be independent and make that work up. Somebody has to sit down with that little kindergartner and talk about the letter sounds that they missed out on and how they go together. And so it is harder at the elementary level for the teachers to be filling those gaps in when you have. So it might be that we're okay with 20 days at the high school level, but I wouldn't be okay with 20 days for a 1st grader, because we'd be setting them up to really struggle.
I was just gonna say, that's why I really think it has to be broken apart into elementary, middle school, and high school.
And if we can work with the families when they're little and really help build positive attendance.
But just in addressing something that Josh did say, I'm not an advocate for pushing a kid through any grades. So, I mean, and
I didn't want to imply that, right?
No,
I mean that.
I know we have, in the past, had a reputation where you just pass the kid on and pass the kid on and hope that somewhere along the way someone's going to help that kiddo fill in the gaps. You cannot do that with children. You either help them learn now, or they're missing the boat. And I think we tried to do a pretty good job at putting the kibosh on that, to where if a child isn't where they need to be to graduate to that next grade level in elementary, they're not going there. So that's because that's a big problem in my mindset for the way children learn, and you're just setting them up to fail by pushing them through the system.
We just compound the learning gaps.
What we could do is kind of take this draft in its rawness to the next board meeting.
Okay.
And in the interim, I would like to just kind of survey the elementary team and say if there was a number. I mean, again, maybe if they're looking at their own data, there would be a number that pops out of like relatively.
And I'll use Dustin's spreadsheet and put our numbers to it.
Yeah, and
to see
maybe
what
just
that
get
looks
some
like.
data that we could look at and just say, this is what we're talking about, because I also think the board needs to see, you're talking about 400 kids
Yeah.
in
Right.
just secondary,
That's
like
big.
the magnitude of
That's a
that.
huge
So
number.
we could play around with just getting some of that, but I would love to have elementary give me a perspective of if you could have in your perfect world, what would be, what number in your mind would it be where you first start that conference, and then what would, if there was a second step, what would it be, and at what point would you guys be comfortable where you're like, this is truly, we're gonna call this habitual truant, and do you feel like it's concrete and it's black and white, do you feel like you want some gray, like just, and then asking the same thing for Chris and, Matt, like where, because and then we're bringing some of that information to the board of this is some feedback from the admin team around, like, this is what they're dealing with, and I mean, I could speak to when I was a principal, but I would want current information, like how problematic is attendance for them? Are we talking about it's 5 families and it's fine? Or are we talking about it's 20, 30, 40 families and they're well over the 20 mark? That piece I don't know.
Those kids that are getting the good grades that you had mentioned that are constantly 13, 14, what are their reasons for missing 13 and 14?
I mean, they're all different. Some of them are legit. Some of them came down with a sickness.
Yeah.
I mean,
are they abusing it as far as, are they just skipping school because they don't want to?
I don't know.
Are they skipping school? Or
I'm sure there's a couple. I would say kids that are just truly skipping school. But even some of those kids, you go talk with those kids that are skipping, they struggle with the same motivation, are different. They're not as motivated as I am. Some of them have anxiety. Some of them have, they have their own challenges. I mean, every kid is so unique.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say like, hey, get to school. It's easy. Well, for some of those kids, it's not as easy as it was for me and you to go to school.
And some of those A students are A students for their time management, and they know that I can get to work and take care of this in 40 minutes. And they're like, why would I come and do the work for 30 minutes and then sit in a room for 20 minutes?
Going to the elementary,
Again, making your 55-minute class period meaningful.
the more that those elementary students can push our elementary principals and the middle school principals, it does make the high school
For sure.
job easier.
Right.
I mean, if we knew that if we had a kid, and especially if we found a way to put it into Skyward, I think we could do a better job at doing that at some point. But if we saw, okay, hey, you had a petition in 6th grade, 4th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, and now you're
That
petitioning for
pattern.
the second, like, that I feel a lot more confident taking that
Right.
kid to the board, and I don't care what the grades are. Now the board decides to give you the credits, good for that. That's what they decide. Awesome, but I feel confident
Right.
being able to take them to the board.
But
And I
I-
can justify to the board, hey, they've had a
Right.
petition 5 different times.
Right.
But I also think back to Josh's point at the very beginning, and we've all kind of said this, is I would love to see, like, what is our campaign to make our schools places and like really selling
100%.
that.
I think that's the
And-
push.
And that, like, like I know Shine is doing it, she has a whole, kind of anchor board where it's like she's tracking attendance and they randomly have these fun days where cool things are happening and like,
That's cool.
Timberlake Middle is doing these lessons where it's just like the kids cannot wait to find out what's happening, and so are there additional things that we could do so it's not just on the reactive nature of we're absent, like how do we do we put in some transitional things through the lens of like if we have kids who have anxiety and they're struggling, so how do we bridge that gap if they've been gone, if they've been sick for 2 weeks, or what are some of those positive things so that they really want to be there, and recognizing life happens, sometimes you can't, so then how do we help them make that a smooth transition? And I think that there's things that we could be doing better.
And the problem with Dustin's, because I've had that in my head, and by the time you're like, oh, this is the 5th time, you look, they're 17. So you can't even charge them with habitual truancy anymore. You're like,
Yeah.
They need it.
What do
Are
you
you
think
guys-
the principals would say, the elementary principal? I'm trying to put myself, I know I said I wasn't going to talk at all about elementary, and okay, I'll shut up after this one. But you have a kid, 4th grader, who's doesn't meet the requirement, whatever, absent a bunch, but going back to kind of like the high school, he's getting A's and B's. The kid's showing proficiency at 4th grade, 3rd grade level. Maybe he's in 3rd grade, he's 5th grade, he's advanced. How do you hold that kid back?
They wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because
So it goes back
our report cards are standards based, so if they can show proficiency, but what I do think that a lot, I mean, our elementary teachers have morning meetings, so they do a lot of like connectedness
sure.
activities, and so and if you have a kid that's been gone for a while and they come back in, I mean, that teacher is meeting with them at their recess, at their lunch, just to like, hey, go play with Johnny. I mean, they're trying to incentivize being there. So, I mean, they wouldn't retain a kid or even recommend retention. But it is really, I mean, and this would be a question I'd want to ask the principals. I think if you were a really gifted high kid, then yes, you could probably miss a lot and still be fine. But at some point, even those really high kids, I mean, because it's exposure opportunities, there's
sure.
still information you're not exposed to. So yes, you might learn it quickly, but if you're gone for long periods of time, that will start to steamroll, and eventually there's going to be things you just don't know how to do. But, the other piece of this, and this is not the popular piece, and I mean, I really would prefer not to say this on camera, but it is a reality. I mean, it's an honest answer, is we have kindergartners who's missed 50 days of school, and then that teacher feels judged on their IRI.
Sure.
They had no impact on the student
Yeah.
because the student was gone. And so, but they're still computed in that score. When you get to 3rd grade, I mean, I know teachers feel the magnitude of the ISAT, and then when they have 10 kids that have excessive amount of absences, and they're doing everything they can to catch them out, and then that child performs low on an ISAT, I mean,
SMART goals with your APLP.
SMART goals with IPLP around it. I mean, so and I know that's not why this is a big deal, but that is part of the equation. I mean, we have to talk about that, because I get it. I don't want to be judged on a number that I have no control over, and I was supposed to get you for 100 days and I only got you for 5 of those days, and then we're all shocked that you didn't perform well. I mean, but that's a factor. So, and I mean, again, the reality is there's decisions made based on ISAT and IRI data. I mean, we get money based on IRI, so it matters.
So does attendance.
Right.
Because we are losing money every day when kids are not in school.
Yeah.
So, but from a teacher standpoint, that piece, that's another element that's hard.
It would be interesting to know from the board too how they feel about what's the term, I can't think of it, for if they meet a certain requirement, they don't have to.
Oh, the learner, the
self-directed learner. Is that something that we should be pushing, or?
Well, we have the policy,
Yeah, we created a policy for it.
so we should be using it.
So every kid that qualifies, do we want to give them an option?
I think at our next admin meeting, we really should go through that policy fine tooth and break it off in elementary. What would this look like for elementary? I know we have the policy, but I don't know that people understand implementation of the policy at each grade band. And I think maybe if we spent some time really being thorough with this is what it would look like, what it could look like. I know high school has it a little bit more dialed in, but elementary has no idea.
Right, because
And the self-directed learner helps with the money side of attendance, but it doesn't help with the things that you're the soft skills that you're talking about.
And I would like to go through and see how many of our kids are self-directed learners and what their attendance is right now.
Right.
I bet you they're here every day as is.
That's usually
Yeah, so are we promoting, hey
unless
buddy,
they have-
guess what?
That's what I mean.
You don't have to
Do
show
we
up
wanna
tomorrow.
be saying,
I'll try to
because
run
Ryan
it.
has a spreadsheet
It will
that's
be
like
interesting,
everybody who meets
because
the
I
GPA,
yeah.
and then like he was saying, everybody who has the,
The
scores
last
to
test score.
back it up. And then, so every one of those kids we should be reaching out to say, do you
What?
want to be a self-directed learner, or just if they're over? I guess I just need to review the policy.
The one negative when I was going through the self-directed piece, and I saw, and I can't remember the number, let's just say it was 50, but don't even come close to quote me on that. We go out and ask 50 kids to be a self-directed learner.
35 of them, 40 of them take advantage of it, and they end up being absent a bunch.
Mhm.
Now we're asking our teachers
Mhm.
to do a little bit more work, and a lot of those kids are your 3.3 plus kids, and they're going to be in after school emailing the teachers.
Yeah.
That was one of the big cons, or one of the only cons that I could think about is, well, our teachers are actually going to, the more kids are gone, the more work we're putting on our teachers to do. Are we okay with that?
Well, and how long are they gonna stay a self-directed learner if then we take off any pressure to
Right,
be?
but if you really look at the self-directed learner statute and the policy, it's not just you're proficient and you have a GPA, but you
Mhm.
also, there's a plan, and your absences have something to do with whatever that your plan is, so.
It still boils down to a lot more work for teachers.
And
I would look at those that are already 10.
'Cause I don't know how much
many of those
more,
would qualify.
if you become a
Those are the ones
self-directed
that I would go
learner,
after.
what does that mean? I'm going to have 10% more absences, so instead of missing 9 days, I'm going to miss 10 days. I don't know how much that would look like. I mean, if my kid, I'm going to put on a self-directed learner. Do I plan on him missing any more days? None. But I just know if he gets a cold and he's got to stay home, sweet. I just made the district $57. But how many kids are going to think, oh, I'm a self-directed learner? That's okay. I can miss a few extra days.
It makes it easier.
How many
I think,
more
yeah, the morning battle
absences
for
is that
parents
going to
are like
create,
that.
which is going to then in return create a little bit more work for our teachers?
Yeah. And is there
Yeah.
some hypocrisy of like, you gotta be here, you gotta be here? You don't, you
Yeah.
don't, you don't.
I don't know. I think it really does go back to what is a self-directed
Yeah.
learner.
Right.
It's more about, I'm missing school because I'm also participating in this outside activity that helps me be a better person all around. And it happens to happen on a Friday, so I have to take that day. Different than, I'm just not coming to school today.
But the only two requirements to be a self-directed learner to meet the qualifications is the proficient on the state standard test and the GPA. Then they fill out the form, which has to get approved.
But there's, I thought there was language in there about their plan, if I remember correctly. We can look at it, we can go
Okay.
through it with the administrators, but, and get to where everybody feels comfortable and we're not creating a whole bunch of extra work for teachers and creating a system where it's a free-for-all and kids just get to willy-nilly stay home whenever they want. And because I agree with you, there are soft skills attached to being punctual and regular in your attendance.
Okay, I'm gonna stop us because we have a couple minutes and I'm gonna recap so we're all on the same page. Because now you're officially part of policy. Okay, 3370, 3410 is going to the board. 3050 is going to the board just for discussion, so it won't be any action. And I think then in the interim, we'll meet with the admin team and really just kind of, I would like to ask, I'm gonna come up with some key questions. Josh, you said you would add you and
Yes.
Dustin would get together with your numbers, but I
Yeah.
wanna ask
Shannon
the middle
will work
school
on
and
that tomorrow.
elementary, give them some questions and get some feedback so that then when we do take this to the board, maybe we have some talking points of here's some,
Here's information for you
Should
to
the
kind
middle
of just
schools
think
put that
about.
together too?
Huh?
Should the middle schools?
That would be awesome, yeah, because you guys would have some GPA stuff, where
Mhm.
elementary can't do that because we have a standard space, but, and then I wanna look into more about, some just ideas around campaign positivity. That's what I named it. That's off the top of my head.
Those books that I gave you have,
Yeah, I wanna, and on my spare time,
On her elliptical.
on my elliptical, okay.
That's where
Is Josh our leader of
Uh,
campaign positivity? Is he?
Yes, he
Okay.
is leading
I am
the
Mr.
charge.
Positive. You know who doesn't have an attendance problem? Is my behaviors. They are there every day.
I know, isn't it something? Yes.
Every
Amen.
day.
I mean, it's like
It's 7 a.m. before the doors are even open.